Hi there, my name is Daniel Walter Scott, and in this video we're going to look at the new features of Illustrator 2018, and I'll add my very subjective opinion to them all. Also at the end of the video as well, we'll cover some of the releases that happened during the year. Okay, a lot of these things get slipped in with middle of the year releases, so we'll cover some of those as well. Now, I've got an Essentials and Advanced course on my website, bringyourownlaptop.com. So if you're new, check out the Essentials course. If you're a daily user and you want to go fast, check out my Illustrator Advanced course there. Now, are there any revolutionary changes that are going to make us all jump around? Not really. Illustrator is a great product and has been for a long time, but the upgrades I'll go through are small, but they really do make it more of a joy to work with Illustrator. So they're totally worth it. So if you're a daily user of Illustrator, you'll love these small but amazing upgrades. Let's do it. First on the list is the Puppet Pin tool. Okay, so have your vector drawing selected. Okay, and I'm going to go down here, the thing that has a little push pin. Okay, and I'm going to click once. Clicking once is not a good idea because if I click and drag this, nothing happens. So I need at least 2 points. So I'm going to do one in his hand, one in his armpit. Now I'll go back to the hand and hey. Okay. Very cool. Allows me to redraw or at least reshape my drawings. Okay, draw one kind of standardized shape and I can adjust this guy in all sorts of different ways. And what you might have noticed is though, with only 2 points, okay, he kind of pivots around here. So add a few points. Add him armpits, hands, legs, a couple of knees for him, maybe one in the middle, one in the hat. I find that sort of rig out seems to work, keeps him kind of controlled. Okay, and you can see now he kind of wiggles. Now, if you are wanting complete control, can you see his glasses moving there? You can add another pin there and another pin here, and the more pins you have, the more kind of like rigid he is. Okay, as well as the pins, can you see this little dotted line around the outside? If I click, hold, and drag that, I can kind of move it around. Don't add another pin. Okay, click and drag this. I can rotate it. Maybe this idea will be a bit better. Okay, so I can rotate my pins as well. Now this is super cool, I guess, but in fact, I don't use it very much. I'm more of a graphic web designer, so if you are an animator or an illustrator, you might love this tool. A couple of things to watch out for at the moment is that if I click and drag this, you'll notice that he ends up underneath. I can't figure out a way of doing the pin depth, who's on top. So the Puppet Pin tool has actually been around a little while in Photoshop and in After Effects, okay, and it's a little bit more mature in those options. There doesn't seem to be a way of doing the pin depth or layers for these different pins, which is available in other software. Other thing to note is that when I put him behind there, say he's scratching his, looks like he's scratching his bum, okay, but it's scratching his knee, and I leave it behind there, and then I click off, go do something else, and I come back, got it selected, go back to the pin tool, and you're like, oh, awesome, they're all still there. It's kind of fused the vector, kind of, okay. If I go to outline mode, you can still see they're in there, okay. If I get off this, you can still see the vectors are in there, and I can play with my direct selection tool and kind of unpick it, but just know that get it right the first time or make a duplicate before you start drawing these things, or at least saving another version. If you had no idea, I got 2 outlines there. It's Command Y on a Mac or Control Y on a PC. Just shows you the outlines of the vectors. Now, if you are looking at this and going, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could animate it? You could start making animated GIFs with your characters. I want to get onto the other features, but quickly in After Effects, if I bring in that same illustration, okay, make a new comp, leave it all as defaults, drag the Illustrator file in. There's the Puppet tool up here, see in there? I can give them the same kind of pins. Pins, 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 pins. Zoom in. And watch this. If I hold down the Command key, so I'm going to click on this tool here, click on the Command key and drag, and you see the little timeline moving down the bottom. And if I let go, come back here, you have a total dancing monster thing. Cool, back to Illustrator. Okay, so next new feature is kind of a double one. One is less exciting. So if I pick a new document, and let's say I pick an A4 document, click create. By default, the new Essentials looks like this. It's very different. You've got this properties panel. Okay, if you are an existing Illustrator user, which you probably are, you will load up probably with your old, whatever you had last time, but go up to Essentials, okay, and click on it. Just have a look at this new format. Okay, I love it because it brings us into the next feature, which is properties. This properties panel is brand new. It's kind of like the attributes panel was. Now, I love it, even though I've only just started using it. You can see here by default, it has all sorts of awesome data about your document, your units of measurement, You can turn your rulers on and off from here, and this one here, handy. Everyone forgets where the pixel grid or the transparency grid is. Okay, you can turn all your guides, lock them, turn smart guides on and off. All of our snapping, especially the snapping to pixel stuff when I do a lot of web work and icons. Keyboard increments, okay, that's for when I draw my shape and I want to use my selection tool and just use my arrow keys on my keyboard and just tap it along. At the moment, by default, if I click in the background here, it uses 0.3 millimeters. Okay, if you're in inches, it'll be different, obviously. But you can turn that right down if you want to get real fine support. So I do 0.01, okay, and now when I click it, it just moves and you can barely see it moving. It's moving in such small increments. Okay, so, and if you hold shift while you're doing that exact same thing, it times up whatever that number in here is by 10. You can move in nice big chunks. And this thing here, scale, stroke, and effects, is probably my most exciting because as a trainer, let's add a stroke to this guy here. A nice big one, okay, and if I scale it down, okay, holding shift to scale it down, okay, it doesn't scale the stroke around the outside by default, okay, which is a little weird sometimes, and especially when I'm teaching new people. So if I click in the background now and I say scale, stroke, and effects, now if I scale it down, can you see the stroke on the outside got smaller proportionately? Super helpful stuff. This has all been there before. It's just been hidden away in preference menus. And this one here, weirdly, in the transform menu. So happy to see it here. Super helpful, super easy. Same with document setup. You can jump in here and adjust your units, bleed, all sorts of awesome stuff. Okay, so that's with nothing selected, but if I have an object selected, fill and stroke are here. Okay, you can obviously still use your old options, but it's nice and easy in here. Same with opacity. Your transform panel is here and always open, flip horizontal, flip vertical, all this sort of stuff. That if you're experienced, you know where it is. It's just handy to have it here in a contextual menu, okay? Select on stuff and it gives you adjustments for this particular thing. Now just keep an eye on quick actions, okay? This will depend on what you have selected, okay? It'll just give you specific stuff for your object. You can see in here, align to pixel grid, which we'll look at later on. My arrangement panel, bring front backwards, all sorts of really nice stuff, really good idea. Same with type, okay? You can see in here, I've got my character panel, my paragraph panel. Create outlines. Oh, you guys are awesome. Nice work, Illustrator. Puppet pen tool, I'm probably not going to use, but this properties panel here could change my Illustrator life. If you don't like it, don't worry. You can go back to the Essentials Classic, okay, and go back to this view here. All right, on to the next feature. So the next new things about Illustrator is to do with artboards. So I'm going to create a new artboard. Let's say I do a lot of UI design for mobile apps. Okay, so I'm going to pick an iPhone 6S. Great, so we've got an artboard, so this isn't new, but there have been some things with the artboard. So if I grab my artboard tool, which is this guy down the bottom here, and I have them selected, you can see how I can make a new artboard and it pops it next to it. That's fine, and I always add a bit more space. Okay, but so the upgrade is I can select them both at the same time now. Okay, whereas before I had to select them separately and adjust them. Okay, and that was a big pain. So it's just a little change for artboards. The other little change is that you can now have a maximum of 1,000 artboards. I have no idea who needed that change. It's definitely not me. If you've got 1,000 artboards in one Illustrator file, you've got a hard job. So let me make one more. I'm just holding Alt while I'm dragging to add another one. I'll make another one. Okay, so I've got 4 of them now. So to select them all, hold Shift and just click them, or if you click off just into one, you can hold your Shift key down and just drag a box around them all. That might be a nice, easier way to do it. Okay, so what else has got upgraded? You can now align and distribute artboards, which is super useful. Okay, so here's my line panel here. I can, let's say they got a little bit off, okay, and I can line them up. I can hit this little more button here and I can distribute centers just to get everything lined up nicely. One of the other new upgrades is that, say I've done my iPhone styles, I'm gonna hold down Alt on my PC or Option key on my Mac and drag out another set. Okay, but let's say I want to do some, I select all of these now and I can say actually all of this group is iPad. And the cool thing about that is if it had artwork on it, it would get duplicated as well. So again, here shows me how good my arrange and distribute is. Holding Shift, grabbing all these guys and say in here, align and distribute, please. Still not quite enough room, that's okay. Let's say I've got it and I'm working on different sizes and web and mobile and it's all getting a little bit out of control. What I can do is select them all. I just did Command A on my Mac or Control A on my PC. Grabbed all my artboards and I can use this one here. It says rearrange all. This is handy. I can say I want them all going from left to right and I want a space between them, big space of like 1,000 pixels, and they all just stack nicely. Can be a nice way to tidy up your artboards. Likewise in there's an option to go columns. So I can say I want, say 2 columns, and I'm going to run it left to right. Okay, and 100 pixels. Great. So it just stacks them all nicely and rearranges them. Those are the upgrades to the artboards. Let's move on to my favorite now, type upgrades. Okay, first of the new font additions, okay, for Illustrator 2018 is something called a variable font. So let's say this font here, Museo, I like it as a family. There is sans serif, there is the slabbed version, and in this Museo slab you can see here I've got a few different weights. I've got italics, okay, so it's great, it's a nice usable font. But imagine I want a condensed version. There is none. Or that I want a weight that doesn't exist here, a little bit heavier or just somewhere in between one of these. That's where a variable font's going to come in. Okay, what it means is if I drop down my character panel here, you're looking for these ones that are open type fonts but have this var next to them. They're variable fonts. Okay, so I'm going to pick this one here, and what will happen is it's not popping up in this menu, but if I click these little dots here and it's this option here in your character panel, let's open it up so you can see window type character panels, and it's this option here. So whenever you pick a variable font, you get this option. Okay, hey, look at this. So I can't just pick a weight, I can pick any weight. How cool is that? Get it down to the, if you are watching this and you don't really mind about fonts, it's not a big deal, but if you are a typographer, it's amazing that you can pick any sort of weight you want. Okay, same with the width, condense font, and it's not just making it narrower, you'll notice that the actual fonts change. Okay, they're being designed at all these different levels. The poor typographer who had to work out that. Okay, slant, okay, is my italics, and again, it's not just sliding it over. The typographer's gone through and made adjustments. The drawbacks of this is that there are very little fonts that are available. Okay, that will change. And some of the fonts that are built into Illustrator, let's say I was looking at this one, Source Sans. Okay, use Source Sans a bit for web stuff, and you'll notice in here, it just has weight. Okay, so this font here has been only adjusted for weight. Keep an eye on typekit.com as well as they release new fonts. Adobe are releasing them, Google, Windows, a few of the big players are releasing variable fonts. I'm pretty excited. Another little upgrade is this panel here, my character panel. Watch this, kind of like live updates. If I roll across these, can you see updates in the background? Rather than going, I want a big font, and you just kind of like, you just kind of guess and then have to drop down again. Is that useful? Kind of. You can notice here as well, instead of going to the variable font, there's some preset versions or default versions as well as your adjustments. Weirdly, it's not working over here for me at the moment, the live adjustments. They lie, they are working now. They weren't a second ago. Anyway, works for leading and adjustment as well. I need to have a bit of type that has leading. Okay, I can just really handy. It's a small upgrade, but super handy. Okay, so the next type upgrade in Illustrator is something called stylistic sets. It refers back to the glyphs panel really. So we knew in the past if I typed in something and I typed in Queen, I picked a font, I'll pick Lust. Okay, and the cool thing about it is that a font like this has a lot of glyphs. So if I highlight this one here, you'll notice in the new version, or at least the 2017 version, the glyphs pop out automatically, which is cool. Okay, and I can go through and say, I like this one and I like this one. And you can spend a bit of time fiddling with this. And that's great for when you're working with type, you've got a bit of time to spend. But stylistic sets, the difference between that, think of it as what we just did there was a manual way of picking glyphs. What we can do though is use a stylistic set, and that set is defined by the actual type designer or the typographer. Okay, so if we go to Window and open up Type, and we'll go to Open Type, what we're looking for first of all is, see this icon here? And not all fonts have stylistic sets. Okay, so this might be grayed out if yours doesn't have it, but if it does, look at this guy here. If I drop him out, let's look at doing this one, but I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, because we're looking at this L where it joins the baseline. Okay, you might hate that bit of the font. Okay, and you need it straight up and down. You can see there it's gone through and done that for all of the L's. Okay, so that's one of the things that the typographer's done. Let's look at alternate A. We've got this kind of like traditional typographer's A, but not the way we draw it. Watch this A. All the A's switch out. Instead of going and finding and replacing all the A's with this one here, body copy, okay, super easy using stylistic sets. So I've left that one on, G1 and 0, let's turn that on. So let's go to, let's type in a G, a 1 and a 0. Okay, and select it all, let's have a look at those ones. So these are actually not universal. This is whoever sat down to do this font decided we're going to do these particular features, and they got to name them as well. So you can see serifed, it's not a 1, it is an I. So capital I in this font by default is just a stick, which looks like an L or a 1. So if you have a font you need to be really clear about that one, you could use the stylistic set that says serifized I. You can see, puts an I on there. And /0. Hey. Okay, and alternate to G. How cool is that? I love it. Let's have a look at this font here. Look at these stylistic sets, and it's just going to go through and have a look at different ones. You can turn them on and off. This is kind of like got a top swoosh. This one's got a bottom swoosh. There's no bottom swooshes in this one. There is. Turn one off. That one there seems to be connected. You can't have that one with that one on. So have a play around with the different sets. These haven't been named very well in Lust. Okay, they should probably use my bottom swoosh terminology. Okay, but some of them have, and some of them are just called sets. That I am excited about. Okay, so last of the type upgrades is when I have this selected and I switch to libraries. In the past, when I want to add this, I could only add it as a graphic, and I added it, and that was cool, but when I wanted to use it later on, it was like this graphic, not editable text. Okay, there was a way of going into it and figuring it all out, but what you can do now is with it selected, you'll notice that this is a brand new option, okay, text. And the cool thing about that is if I add it, whoops, click on the add button, okay, it's in there as actual text, and when I drag it out, okay, it is actual editable text. What's also cool is that if you dump it in there with a paragraph style or a character style, that will come along for the ride. Also, that bit of text can actually be used in InDesign as well. We'll bring through paragraph styles. All right, next feature. All right, the next feature is exporting using the asset panel. So window and go down to asset export. Okay, this thing here was in an earlier version. I love it. One of the problems is that if I tried to drag in multiple objects in one big group, it turned it into one big asset. But I want to drag it out. Watch this. They're all separate now, okay? They're all grouped separately, and that's how it defines which are the different objects, which is cool. If you still do want one big asset, okay, I can select them all again, and while I'm dragging it in there, hold down the Alt key on a PC or Option key on a Mac, and you can see they're all joined again. So just make sure they're grouped, and then they can be exported. If you've never used this before, I can click on these guys and say, actually, I want you to be a PNG or a JPEG or an SVG, which is vector, same with a PDF, and then I can click export, and they'll all export separately. Another cool little export feature is, say you're a person who likes to use layers to separate everything out. At the moment, this guy here is all on one layer. Let's just say I select all these guys. There's an option in here that says release to layers. Okay, so I've separated them all on their own layers. I'll get them out of this initial one. Get rid of you. Get rid of the original one. So they're all on their own layers. That's not the new trick. That's been there for a while. So we've separated all the groups into layers. And let's say that's the way you like to work. You like to have all sorts of different designs on different layers, but now I can select them all, or just one of them, or all of them but one of them. And see this option down here? This is brand new, collect for export. Okay, and it does the exact same thing, kind of dumps them all into the export panel as separate little objects from those layers. Then we can decide what kind of format we want and then hit export. The asset export panel was awesome. It's got even better in this version. Thank you, Adobe. Next feature, please. All right, this upgrade is like an anti-upgrade. Just a small little option, but a lot of people complain about it to me, is that in 2017, they made the default is when I have something selected and I'm up here and I try and zoom in using my Command plus for a Mac or Control plus for a PC to zoom in, it centers where you have your selection. Okay, it doesn't matter where you move, if you hit zoom in, it centers it again. I love that. Okay, lots of people don't. And there was no way of turning it off, but you can in this option. If that's been driving you mad, go up to Illustrator CC, Preferences, and go to Selection. If you're on a PC, go to Edit. Down the bottom, there'll be Preferences, and go to Selection. Okay, so in here, there's an option that says Zoom to Selection. Turn that off now. If I have that selected, it goes back to old default, where it just zooms into the middle of the document. I'm going to turn mine back on because I love it, but I think I'm in the minority. All right, next feature. All right, this next little upgrade is when I'm making a new document. It means that I can do maths in these little boxes now. We haven't been able to do that before, so it's really handy if you need, say, a print document and it needs to be A4. And we look at the presets and there's A3, but there's no A2 as a preset. I'm not sure why it's not there, but I'm doing a poster. It's in this many centimeters, but I know A2 is just double an A3. So in here, times, which is the little asterisk key, 2. Okay, and I grab U and I times U by 2, and now I have double A3, which is A2. Or it might be that you need a document and you just need to add, say 3 millimeters, or say 3 millimeters either side for bleed, okay, and it adds it there easy. I didn't add millimeters, I added centimeters. But you get the idea, all maths can be done in these options now. In the 2017 version, it couldn't be done. This feature also works in InDesign and Photoshop as well. Just so you know, you can divide by, plus, minus, and times, which is asterisks. Awesome, next feature. The next change to Adobe Illustrator 2018 is now if you make swatches, they become global swatches by default. Okay, this might make a difference to you. Global swatches have been around a little while, so I'm going to open up my swatches panel. All they mean is, let's say I've got this selected, I want this to be a swatch, so I'm going to say new swatch, and I click OK. Okay, and by default, it's this thing called a global swatch, and you can tell the difference is, can you see over here, it's got like a little triangle in the corner? It means it's a global swatch. What is a global swatch? Okay, say if I pick another non-global swatch, okay, any of these, so I've got two colors, one of them's global, one of them's not. You can see here, if I click off, have nothing selected, and I go and change this pink here, and I go and make it a bit darker, okay, it changes in the swatch, but didn't change this color here. But if I change this global color, make it a bit darker, look what happens, it changes this. So it's just something to be aware of, that that's going to happen to you, and if you've never used global swatches before, you might find that quite useful, just knowing that there's such a thing as a global swatch. You can make any swatch global, double click it and go up to global, click OK, and that's now global, and you need to apply it. And now when you apply that to different shapes, they're connected. All right, next feature. Okay, so that's actually the end of the 2018 upgrades, but what I'll show you is a few of the ones that slipped through during 2017. What Adobe doesn't do now is wait for big launches to release all the products. What they do is during the year, you'll get an upgrade and some things will upgrade. And if you're like most people in the world, you won't even go and check what's new. So let's have a quick look at what actually has been released in the past 12 months that I bet you probably didn't even know got released. Just the useful stuff. The first one is cropping. If you're like me, everyone does it this way, right? You grab the rectangle tool, you draw it across that thing there, you grab these two guys, and then you go Command 7, okay, to crop. Or you go the long way up to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Okay, the only trouble with this is that kind of that object is still there. It's still hiding in the background. You can see it there. You can kind of move it around, and it's kind of cool that way, but there is lots of problems. If I go to Window and I use my Asset Export, if I drag this whole thing, you'll notice that, can you see, it actually puts the whole thing around the outside. Can you see, not just that inside bit? Yeah, I can actually, the actual bounding box of that asset is the whole thing around. So, plus it makes file sizes really big. Say you just use a little small part of this and you export the PDF, the whole image is in there. So, thing you didn't notice is with it selected, there's this option now called Crop Image. It says, don't worry, okay, it's not going to affect the original because I've linked this image actually when I imported it. So it says, don't worry, the original is going to stay the same, but what I can do now is do a crop, like kind of a Photoshop crop. Hit return and double click. All those pixels are actually gone forever. I don't know why I've got two versions of this. Okay, so that's the cropping tool that you probably missed. Okay, so next feature that got released lately is if I go to type, okay, and I've got some specific fonts I always use, okay, people forget that this option here now exists, the favorites bar. So if you are a person who keeps using ones, and you have to keep going through this list and kind of like working for your corporate fonts, is you can actually just star a few of them, okay, and the ones that you use all the time, just turn that on, and you've got a nice cut down favorited list. Especially good if you're working in an agency or a company that uses the same fonts over and over again. Stops you having to look through it all. Turn it off by clicking it again. All right, next feature. Okay, another thing that Adobe have introduced is templates, especially for illustrators. If I go to File, New now, okay, in here, if I go to Print, you'll see down the bottom here, there's some template options. There's 23 of them. They're free to use, and the cool thing about them is that, say, just get you started, okay, for a new design, especially if you're a new designer or don't use Illustrator that often, or don't do a lot of type design that often. Click on this one. There's an option, say this one here, it says download. I've already downloaded this one. I'm going to open it, and you can see it's all ready to go using Typekit fonts. There's actually two color options in this case, and if there's any stock imagery, often they'll be replaced by gray boxes and you'll have to put in your own images, but templates, super easy to get started with some nicely designed documents all ready to go. Okay, so next feature is to do with the libraries. You might already be using libraries, which are awesome. If you're not, get started. Okay, I'm going to create a new library here for this project. Okay, this is going to be my 3D characters, create it. and all you do is drag stuff into it. You probably already know how to do that. A couple of things is that up here in this little flyout menu, okay, you've got things like collaborate. Collaborate's awesome. It means I can send it to a colleague and they have the ability to see this 3D characters library as well. So when they add stuff to it, I see it, and vice versa. I find this is really good when I'm working with logos and fonts and stuff on a shared client, okay, or say it's our company. We'll have our company logos, fonts, colors in there, and it's a shared one across the whole agency. But one of the newer features is that in here, there's one that says just share link. That's really good if you want to share out with an external source so they can view this library, but they can't edit, add, and update. Okay, they just get to see, they get to click, hold, and drag stuff out, okay, but they can't edit it, they can't adjust it, it's locked down. So those are the two options, collaborate or share link. Both have their purposes. One last thing before we leave libraries is if I add something in here, okay, and then I go and try and drag it out later on, it's linked, okay, and that's fine. Okay, I like that. It means if I update this option, this guy comes along for the ride, but there's often times I just want this to come out and be a raw vector shape. And all you need to do is hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC. Hold that down while you're dragging it out, okay, and you'll see now here's vector shape ready to go and ready to be edited rather than linked to our library. So this works for Photoshop, InDesign, After Effects, Premiere as well. If you want to bring it in and leave it and make it editable, hold down Alt or Option. Next feature, please. Okay, so this is going to be our last feature. Why? Because I could probably go on forever. So let's call it here and look at this last one, and it is CC Markets. So this has been around for a little while, but it's amazing and people don't know about it. If you go to your Creative Cloud app, okay, if you're on a Mac, it's up here. If you're on a PC, it's probably in the bottom right. You're looking for this little wave here, this CC wave. Okay, find Assets and then find Market. Okay, and yours will look like this. Click on this little search button, and let's say we're building this website here and we need like some social icons. Okay, am I going to go and design social icons or find them from each of the sites? No, I'm going to go and find some other ones that have been designed by people. You can see these ones have been made, okay, kind of like a hand-drawn version. There is some other ones. See, you know, there's just lots here, and I can keep scrolling. Watch this little, I keep going to the bottom here, and it keeps loading more in here, okay? So social icons after social icons. So what I do is I go through, let's say, oh, I like this one here, click on it. I'm looking for an SVG or an AI file because I want it to be in Illustrator, and I click download. Where to? I'll put it to that 3D characters library I made. And what's really cool is that they are commercial use. Okay, I get to use them for free. And watch this, I can just drag these guys out. Give me a lovely. Okay, and I got a bunch of icons. I'm going to ungroup them, and now ungroup them even, and now I've got all my icons to start using in my design. Okay, so it's just really super easy to use Adobe Market to find this kind of more generic stuff. You'll find lots of UI items like buttons, okay, and designs for websites. You'll find lots of vector icon type things. Okay, you're not going to find any stock images, but you will find, let's have a little look here. So in here, type in UI design. Okay, if you are new to it and you're looking for some ideas, you can see here lots of awesome ideas. Okay, yeah, to get started, and you're allowed to use them commercially, which is nice. Okay, so think I need a home button for my website, and I'm going to use an icon. Okay, here we go. Now I'm using it for this web thing here. Obviously, you can use it for anything, print, web, or app design. Okay, it's just a really super little useful feature that not many people know about. Okay, so we're going to stop it here. I could carry on for a million years teaching you 1,000 new things that I think are really useful, but we've covered all the really big ones for the 2018 and some of the ones that they slipped in for 2017. Now remember, if you like my style of training, check out bringyourownlaptop.com. I've got Illustrator courses for intro people and advanced, plus a lot of other courses for, say, motion graphics and web design, UI, UX design as well. Also check out my channel, like and subscribe if you enjoy what I do, and also check out the other 2018 Adobe upgrade videos that I've made. All right, that's it. I'm Dan Scott, and hi there, good people.